and say one more time, thank you very much for joining us today. And I'm going to kick it off by tossing it over to Andrea Weatherhead.
Morning. Well, it's a pleasure to have been invited to speak about this topic. It is a very hot topic right now. My company is Weatherhead Experience Design Group in Seattle. And just a little background, I have been developing interactive museum exhibitions for a really long time. And my first one was the interactive exhibition at Experience Music Project, which is now called Mopop, where people learn to play rock and roll music. And then since then, I wanted to develop interactive experiences for museums around the world. So I started my own company many moons ago. So the part that I'm going to talk about a little bit is what is interactivity, because a lot of what we've created that are, yes, are in physical museums, and yes, those museums are not able to entertain people to do those interactives right now. But many of those interactives could be transported to an online functionality, because at the root of really good interactivity is really good thinking about engaging the visitors' emotional and intellect at the same time, and their bodies and all sorts of things. One comment about this time right now is that even when people do reopen who do have things that are running from touch screens, there's going to be a concern about that. And I know that the Aztec and AAM are going to be probably producing some protocols about sanitizing and how to use those things. But I think this might be a very good opportunity for some of us who are in the field of designing for those to think about different ways to interact with the material, in addition to being converted to online experiences, but also maybe there's gesture control, maybe there's voice activation, maybe we can do some things that can allow you to interact with your phone with an exhibit so that you don't have to actually touch the exhibit. So these are things that I think will be interesting to come up on the horizon for both technology engineers and for designers to create new user interface protocols for people in this time. And in that retrofitting, as that evolves, I think a good thing might come out of it, because I think there'll be some opportunities for more universal design so that we can accommodate more people. So I think it's very important when we put things, if we're taking some interactivity and trying to make that experience work online, it'll be really important to think about accessibility there. So how can we use captioning? How can we use an interpreter? How can we use different modes for people to be able to interact with the content? So I think there'll be some good things that come out of this, where more people will be able to enjoy these things because of the design that'll be forced to happen as a result. The other thing is when we do eventually reopen, I think there might be a backlash against digital engagement, simply because people will be really sick of engaging digitally. So although I am in the field of creating interactive and integrated exhibits that use all modalities, including digital, I think it'll be a very interesting backlash where people want the real thing, and they're going to want to be able to be with real people and with real objects and not be on a screen. So I don't mean to be a disruptor, because I know the topic is about what we can do digitally, but I have a feeling that will be something that will happen. I know it will be true for me. So here's some little points about interactivity that I use when I'm creating an experience. And the examples I'm going to give are indeed physical in museums right now, but as I said up front, I think most things can be converted to an application that would work online. Really important, first and foremost, is a deeply engaging narrative and plot, whatever activity it is. And I'm not talking about virtual tours right now, and those can actually have a super deep and engaging narrative, but I'm talking about an experience or an activity. It just requires that you do deep research and really find a strong narrative that can be dramatic and somewhat transformative for the person, because it's about provoking people's curiosity, not about instruction. So an example of that in the actual physical museum might be the Great Seattle Fire musical that we did for the Museum of History and Industry. I don't know if some of you have seen that. Now, that is something that could be converted to an online video. But the reason that it's amusing is that we made the story work very well musically. So children, when they come out of there, actually end up singing the fire song. And then they want to know more about the fire because they've got this tune in their head. It was an unusual delivery mechanism, and that's what's fun for people, is to have a surprising way to engage with history. I think the second point that this is coming to is that people really need to get emotionally involved and feel what it was like. So if you can try to create experiences where people are transported into the story and help people understand by using their universal emotional response to things, what it might have been like to be there. For instance, for the Flying Heritage Museum up in Everett, they have a bunch of planes, and it's people walk around and look at the planes, but if you don't really understand much about planes, it's not that compelling. So we made some movies for them that juxtaposed the planes and their technology with very deep research into how the pilots experienced flying those planes. Everything from people describing the shaking that made their teeth practically fall out to a German pilot flying over London saying, whoever would have thought that a bunch of civilians would have been an actual valid target. And so you get the empathy for both sides of the war. This was Second World War, the Battle of Britain. So that we're appealing to the emotions, right? So you appeal to the universal part of what's human by doing that, because just informing people about the technology of the plane doesn't really help them with that feeling. So that in that way, you can shorten the distance between the history makers and the visitor or the user, if you want to call it the online experience. Again, it really involves deep research, because that research, when you go very deeply into stories, and you all know this because you're museum people, that can really bring you to a path where you can find an intersection between knowledge and engagement. So for instance, another one that I'd like to convert to online, if possible, is an experience where we had people try to speak Chinook jargon, which was a trading language between many tribes, and still is. And the reason we want you to learn Chinook jargon is because we want you to know what it was like to be illiterate back in the day. If you came from Scotland or France to trap and find furs, and you needed to get down the river. So we ask you to try to get down the river using Chinook jargon. And in order to do that, we taught the computer how to actually understand Chinook jargon by using the voice recognition system. And you would have been amused by how funny people thought it was when we called Microsoft for some support, and they were saying, what are you trying to do? Well, we're trying to have the computer understand the difference between the word trash bag and the actual word for canoe. So that's something that you could do. When we were working with the Chicago History Museum, we did this project with them before social media was actually around. That's how old I am. Where it was called Teen Chicago. And we had teenagers from all across Chicago interviewing elderly seniors about what it was like when they were a teenager. And what was great about that was that it joined together the teenagers from different neighborhoods in Chicago in a project. They also figured out that seniors actually were teenagers once. And some of the stories that came out of that were very eye-opening for the teens and very fun for the seniors. And the stories that they each had their own web page, and they actually then reported back on what they had learned from that. Tell me if I need to stop, because I don't want to overstep time. I've got a few more things, but. What? Okay.
Am I there? Can you see me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think that's great, Andrea. And I suspect folks will want to follow up with questions, because I know that a lot of people are struggling to think about how to get their exhibits that are in their galleries right now that nobody can see, and collections materials, and make all of that accessible. I have to say that the Great Seattle Fire is one of my all-time favorite museum exhibits ever. And what I appreciate most about it is the element of whimsy. It's very whimsical. And I think that whimsy can be a really powerful tool right now if properly placed, right? Because we're also living in this very serious time. And obviously the Great Seattle Fire is a very serious topic. But some well-placed whimsy, I think, can be a good thing. So, so yeah, no, thank you for sharing all of those thoughts, Andrea.
Yeah.
Let's toss it to Chris, who also knows a little something about whimsy, and hear about what he's been working on.
There we are. Hello, everyone. Well, yeah, I hope to be introduced as a master of whimsy every time I come on screen somewhere. So my name is Chris Staudinger. I am the owner, operator, lead guide for a little operation called Pretty Gritty Tours, based primarily in Tacoma, but serving the greater South Sound region. And we are a walking tour company at all times that there's not a pandemic looming over everyone. And so now that there is this moratorium on social gatherings and doing anything outside in the world, we had to adapt pretty quickly to figure out how to stay afloat. And the thing that we came up with was to convert to virtual tourism. So on average, 3 times a week, we host a virtual live event where we give a tour of something or some story in the area. And in a lot of ways, the pandemic has been sort of a windfall for us because it has allowed us the opportunity to lean on good old-fashioned campfire stories and to leverage digital tools to really provide exclusive access to stuff. Because as a tour company, we were limited in some ways in what we could actually show people. We sort of had to allude to things at times. And now I can be like, we can show you literally anything that could be accessed at any point. So the live events are a combination of myself or our other guide on screen telling a story, but then we can kick it to video that we've recorded. We've done fly-throughs of certain locations throughout the state. We've been able to show historic photographs and contemporary ones. We've merged in 360 footage so we can actually spin around something and really been able to just allow people an opportunity to see places that we could never have taken them in real life. And we've had some success too working with a couple museums, the Foss Waterway Maritime Seaport and the Lewis Army Museum have both granted us access to go into their collections, and it's allowed them to sort of dredge up things they either don't have places for in their normal, viewing area, or to sort of dig up stories that might have been like too controversial to just have as part of the public display. So it's allowed us to do a lot of fun, creative stuff, and the response has been overwhelmingly positive. I would say on average, we have about 140 viewers that stay with us for an hour-long tour. And so it's actually generated more interest in a variety of things, including our tours moving forward. So I'm not saying I'm super thrilled about COVID-19 being in the area, but it has created a new experience that we can leverage now. I think that's it for me.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. Thanks. And we definitely appreciate your collaboration with the heritage community on a lot of the programs you've been doing. So I invited Elisa, who's on the staff at the Washington State Historical Society, to join us today as well, because she's got her thumb on the pulse of social media. So let's hear from you, Elisa. No pressure.
Thank you. I don't know that I have my thumb on it, but I certainly get really inspired by social media. And that might be like running counter to how some of you feel. Like social media is like a strange beast, and it's really difficult to know like how to use it, and whether I'm being whether I'm connecting in the right way. And so I don't think there's a right way. I'll say that first. But secondly, I just wanted to start with some maybe basic information and share with you some of my favorite tools that I couldn't do social media without. And yeah, and hopefully that will, and some ideas to inspire you, some museums that are doing really great social media content. So I wonder if, can I see all of the participants, or how can I do that? Can I see? Okay.
You might be able to, if you click the double bars on your
okay.
little.
Oh, okay. I see. All right. I can only see some of your videos, but just a show of hands, how many of you have museums with Facebook pages?
I'm gonna do a poll, Elisa. I've never done a poll before, so let's do a poll. Why don't you just keep
that's fine,
talking?
that's fine. Okay.
Let's try this.
Oh, Susan says yes.
Oh,
Thank you.
great.
Okay, so as Allison sets that up, I'm going to ask if your museum has a Facebook page, if your museum has an Instagram, if your museum has a Twitter account, if your museum has a TikTok, and then a show of hands of who knows what a TikTok is. So that was just going to like help me get an idea of where you're all at, and who manages the social media. Like, is this just something that, do you have a marketing person who's doing it? Is it like interns? All of, like, depending on who is managing your social media, you're going to have different challenges and different opportunities for your content. Like, but I'll get to that. How's that poll going?
Just give me a second.
Oh, okay. I'll just move forward.
Yeah, you keep moving. This is an experiment.
Okay, awesome. So I think that social media is a balance of what you post and who you follow. Like, there is as much work to do, like following really inspiring museums and organizations and individuals to generate interesting content for your institution. It takes a lot of time to scroll through. It's really hard work, like scrolling through and getting those ideas, like what's popular right now, like what hashtag is trending. Like, for example, a few weeks ago, the New York Historical Society, which we happen to follow, great follow, by the way. If you're a historical society, they're a great follow. New York Historical Society started a hashtag museum bouquet, in which they took pictures or paintings from their collection of flowers, and then just shot them over directly to another museum as like a kind of like friendly during quarantine like connection, and just saying like, hey, here's a hashtag museum bouquet for, you know, our friends at the Guggenheim. And then the Guggenheim was like, thanks for that hashtag museum bouquet. Here's a hashtag museum bouquet for this one, and this one, and this one. And all of these museums started receiving the bouquets and then passing them on. And I highly recommend jumping on that bandwagon if you have flowers in your collection that you can post and share. But the point is, you don't know that that's a thing that's going on unless you're following and like paying attention to some of these other museums. So if you're a historical society, I recommend going out there and following as many historical societies. Start with the big ones that are going to be, you know, having a dedicated social media person. You know, let them do the work for you. Don't reinvent the wheel. Just, you know, take the ideas that are already out there and reinterpret them for your own institution. So follow all of the great people. Do some.
Can I jump in, Elisa?
Yes.
So we have 100% of the respondents have Facebook pages.
Okay.
76% have Instagram accounts.
Okay.
And 57% have Twitter accounts.
Okay. That's what I would expect. I think that the most social media engagement is happening right now on Instagram, is my guess. And so if you don't have an Instagram page, I would suggest trying that out. And it's fun because it's image based. And so you can just post ephemera from your collection, or you can post, you know, you can really highlight things that are in your museum just with images on Instagram. And so I think it's a great platform for those of you who don't have it. Also, I want to say, if anybody has questions about social media after this, I would like happily take an email. If you wanted to email me and say like, I want to achieve this thing or that thing, I would love to mind meld about those kinds of things. But okay, moving forward. Sorry, I really was taking like too much time. So follow historical societies if you're a historical society, maritime if you're maritime, art if you're art, pioneer museum if you're a pioneer museum, and yeah, use each platform the way it was intended. So Instagram for images, Facebook for like events and like larger like narrative sharing, and Twitter for like, you know, those short, snappy, like live tweeting of an event or live tweeting of, I don't use Twitter so much, so I I wouldn't be like my personal favorite. But I'm going to put in the chat box right now a few of the programs that I really, really love to use that would really help you, especially if you don't have a dedicated social media person or a dedicated graphics designer. So there's here to everybody. Canva is, and Allison can attest to this, Canva is it's a very cheap subscription, but it's a paid subscription that will give you pre-made designs for every platform, for Instagram, for Facebook, and you can just plug in your text or your image and it does all of the graphic design work for you. And it saves you a lot of time. So Canva for like graphic design. And Planoly is another really good one. Planoly will help you create a calendar for your social media. So you can plan your Instagram posts months and months and months in advance. Or if you come across something in your collection, it's like, oh, this is a great thing for a Christmas post. I'll just have to like file that away and remember to post it like in 6 months. You can plug it into your Planoly in December and you'll thank yourself later, because then boom, on Christmas, this postcard will come up from your collection and you'll be right on time. It'll help you keep track of dates and times, like centennial events, like Valentine's, Indigenous Heritage Month. You want to be ahead of the game as much as you can. So Planoly for planning content. I would also say on Instagram, the Repost is an app that you can get for free, and it easily allows you to copy the link of a post that you like and repost it straight to your Instagram, your Instagram page for your museum. And that's really nice because, if you're running out of content, running out of ideas, just repost something great that someone else is doing and add your own text saying like, this is a great repost from this person. They'll thank you for reposting. And then you can give some new information depending on like some new interpretation from your side of things, your museum. Okay, Repost app for reposting Instagram. Those are the 3 tools I use absolutely the most in social media. And I think they will be like the most helpful thing that you can take away from my blabbering. So hashtags, what do hashtags do? Hashtags get you found. Like if you only have, 100 followers and you're like, I want more people to find us and to follow us so that we can engage with more, you need to use hashtags. And here are the most popular museum hashtags. I'll also share that in the chat box. Beep. So just starting with those, you can only use 30 hashtags in any one Instagram post. And so if you just start with this, just copy these hashtags and stick them in your Instagram post. And then anybody who's following hashtag museums or following artwork will, you'll pop up in their feed and they'll be like, wow, what a great follow. I love the Log House Museum. Or like, I love I love DuPont Historical Society. And that's a great way to get, and yes, oh, here's some questions. I love this. Yes, they work for Facebook too. And I don't know how to fix the chat box if it's not working. But I can send you directly.
No worries, it worked when I said that.
Oh, okay. Okay. So I would say, like, last thing, here are a couple of ideas that people are doing in the Seattle area or in Washington that I really love with museums and social media. The Museum of Museums in Seattle, which you may not have heard of because this hasn't opened yet. It's not a good year to open a museum. So they are doing this great social media campaign where they call it a celebrity still life, where they pick a local celebrity and then have them collect a bunch of objects in their house and put together a still life, and then challenge their followers to draw or paint that still life and then tag them. And then the celebrity who made the still life can go and choose which one is their favorite. And the museum all the while is posting all of these like interpretations from their followers of this still life. And so it's a great way to get people engaged, which is what that's your main goal. Get new followers because people want to participate in that activity. And also, highlight someone from your community who, may otherwise not. Yes, contact info for the future. Yes, hang on a second. That's my email. Oh, sorry.
And I'll make sure everybody gets Elisa's email
Oh,
so
okay,
you can
great.
follow up with her.
Please follow up with me. I would love to talk to you about this. So celebrity still life, use the museum bouquet that I already mentioned. Just email me.
Yeah.
I'll tell you everything I know.
Well, and now our group chat is filled with love for Canva, and it is not overstating it to say that Canva has changed my life because I am a terrible graphic designer. It's not a skill that I have, and I'm sure many of you on this phone call find yourself having to put together a flyer or a PowerPoint or a social media post, and you want it to look clean and nice, and I just don't have those skills. So it's a great shortcut. And I think Rachel mentioned that it's actually free for nonprofits. You just have to register. So definitely explore that. I'll make sure that link and all of the links that Elisa has put in the chat also come out in the email that I send later. Quick question, Elisa. How do hashtags work on Facebook? Is there still a sort of advantage to hashtagging?
You can still, I don't think it's as advantageous as on Instagram. I just think there are more people on Instagram who are following hashtags, and therefore like the hashtag that they follow will come up in their feed. And I think Facebook, you can still search that way, but it's not as common to use hashtags, but it will work. If I searched for hashtag museum bouquet in Facebook, all of those museum bouquets would pop up if they posted it to Facebook. But
cool.
It's a great
Awesome.
question.
Great. So some questions are starting to come in, and I think this next one I'll send over to Andrea, and I'm going to read it specifically. And I think it's sort of wondering about kind of evaluation of digital engagement. So the question is there a way to quantify how much online digital interaction equals in-person interaction? As in, when we have stats for people who physically come into the museum, how do we keep track and make sense of those who view us digitally? I don't know if you have any insights into that.
Well, it depends on the level of tracking you can do on your website. So if you can count how many encounters with a particular piece of programming that you have, then you might be able to actually extrapolate how many people did that. Sometimes the number of hits doesn't necessarily translate to the number of people. But if you do keep track of how many people come to the website in general, you should be able to see, if it's built that way, how many people went to a certain page.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and somebody also mentioned in the comments, if you're wanting to track social media kind of engagement, there's lots of tools built into Facebook and Instagram, usually under an Insights tab or button, and you can see where people are going on your feed and what they're clicking through.
And if you can use Google Analytics, if you have anybody there who is very into that, which can be kind of tedious, but it can help find what is really most popular.
Yes, that's a lot of data. So if somebody's kind of wonky on your crew, that's a great thing to dig into. There was another question about digital content for fundraisers that have gone online. And I don't know, Chris, do you have a donation button on your live feeds and stuff?
Yeah, we've tried several options of monetizing our tours, and we do have just a PayPal button that we use for tips or donations that's been very successful. We've also tried using paywalls for some of our tours. So to actually get access, you have to pay a small fee. And then we've done sponsorships as well, where we've had people give us money to do the tour and then made it free for everyone.
Yeah, this came up a little bit in a conversation earlier this week on sort of virtual fundraising and online fundraising, and I think there's still, people are still, so again, we're all building the plane while we fly it, and so I think that we're learning more and more about every day about what's working and what's not, and I'm seeing a lot of programs being offered for free, but with that optional and encouraged donation, and so that's definitely something to consider. Okay, I'm gonna roll down here.
There's also a text to give feature by a company called BluePay that you can text giving, which is very easy.
Yes, text to give, and I will share that with everyone for sure. So Rachel was asking, we are about to launch paid digital programming. I'd love to hear any tips or experiences with success. So Chris, can you just speak a little bit more about how your kind of paid programming participation has compared with the free programming?
Yeah, for the just standard like virtual tour of a place or a building or something like that, we've had more enthusiasm and success by asking for donations or tips at the beginning and end of it. And then for certain ones, like we did a suites tour of Tacoma, where we actually had a little package of local suites that we delivered to people, and you had to buy in for that one. So I've found that if you incentivize the paywall in any way, like it could even just be a sticker that you mail to them, or you're like, in the future, you'll get this if you can pick it up. Just any little physical thing at all really changes people's mind, I've discovered, where they're like, oh, I'm totally comfortable dropping money on this. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that makes sense. Another question for you, Chris. I know a lot of people are thinking about and wanting to do their own virtual tours of their sites. I know the folks over at Browns Point Lighthouse are thinking about that. So what are your kind of top tips for an effective virtual tour, and maybe what are some examples? Obviously, I encourage everybody to check out the Pretty Tours schedule of offerings, but are there other sort of great virtual tours out there that you've seen? And maybe what are the biggest do's and don'ts?
Here, I'm going to try to distill this down because I could talk for days about software and tips, but I think the three biggest things are, if you don't have the Facebook page manager app, get it, because it allows you to directly access your business or museum page from your device. And so you can live broadcast from your phone if you have it on there directly to your museum's page. That's number one. Number two is audio is going to be the single most important part of all of this. People will forgive you for almost any level of video disturbance or whatever, but if the audio is bad, people click away instantly. It's like some curse. And then third, if you are going to worry at all about the video production of it, stillness or stability. So if you want to have some sort of moving tour, there are really affordable ways to like stabilize your phone or whatever. But if you can, just set the phone on a tripod or a book or like some cans, and then live stream from there. That's always my biggest recommendation, because you don't want to make anyone seasick while you're doing it. So those are my top three.
And yeah, your point about the audio, for sure. I saw lots of heads nodding for anybody who's been, participating in any of these virtual tours. It's a biggie. Besides Pretty Gritty, are there other virtual tours out there that you've sort of seen that I know that the Duval Historical Society did one recently that was really popular. And that's maybe one to consider checking out, because I think they're sort of on the scale of a lot of the museums that we're talking to.
Yeah, most of my experience with these have been with various tourism companies who have sort of leveraged, like I know the Tulip Festival up in Northern Washington did obviously a lot of like 360 and visual rich content, which makes total sense. We are friends with the tour company that works out of New Orleans, and they've been doing just like cooking shows from their kitchen to sort of, give that flavor, if you will, of New Orleans while people can't go out and experience it with them. So sort of just leveraging whatever niche really makes you exceptional. People have been really into virtually.
Yeah, and this also came up and alludes to something you said earlier and came up with in our conversation about online fundraising. The public is being very gracious right now. Everybody's having to figure things out in their own lives and in their professional lives that they've never had to do before. And so that's a good thing. And that should allow you to take some risks maybe and try something different. And so the Mountains to Sound Greenway Trust was on our fundraising call, and they do this annual huge brunch, and they raise several $100,000 from this, and everything got shut down just a few weeks before. And it's such a huge chunk of their operating budget. They had to find a way to make this fundraiser work. And so they did these really kind of sweet videos with the board president it was a brunch. So he was making breakfast in his kitchen, very kind of folksy. People like to see that we're all humans and we're all in this together, and we're all kind of, so a little scrappy is not a bad thing. I think about your fundamentals. You want things to look clear and be able to be heard, but try something kind of risky. Now is, I think, the time. That's one of the opportunities here. So are there any other questions? Let me just scroll through in the midst of all of our Canva love, see if I missed anything. I guess one question that I had, I have two questions. First, sort of maybe for Elisa, as I look through the chat and people are commenting on sort of who has the role of social media management in their organization, it's usually the folks who are also doing many, many other jobs. And we all know that's how that works, right? In small museums, we wear lots of hats. So what's sort of the minimum amount of attention people should be posting and giving to their social media, like a post a day, a couple posts a day? I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Great question. Some people say like 3 posts a day is what you want for social media. I think that is a lot. I think you can do some damage by posting too much, and people are like, I would love this content, but I'm like annoyed that I'm seeing it in my feed come up 3 times in a day. And so I'd say 1 a day is my kind of max, unless there's some kind of special thing going on and it's like a one-time deal. Like, we're going to post all of these pictures today because it's the only time we can do it. So I'd say 1 a day being your max, unless it's a special occasion. And then like, if you could shoot for 3 a week, I think that's a great place to start. Do a Throwback Thursday post on Thursday. Pick a hashtag that really connects you with your particular institution. Like if it's Maker Monday, and you work in a museum that has like a lot of folk crafts, that would be a great hashtag day for you to focus on your collections. And I would say the Planoly app that I was talking about is such a great tool for whoever is doing your social media to just get ahead of themselves. That's like the worst place to be when you're like, oh my gosh, it's the centennial of women's suffrage and we don't have anything ready to post for that. Like, and then scrambling to find the thing and then write it up and find the hashtags. It's like, it's miserable. You want to be a few months ahead, or like you could be like a year ahead of the game. If you wanted to. Also, I would say it's not a bad idea, though consistency is king. I think that doing special social media takeovers is awesome. We've been doing that at the Historical Society, and it's been so fun. Like, each person in our staff has taken over all of our social media for a week. And so everybody has a different style. They find different things interesting. And that's like a way to connect with different parts of your constituency. So I would recommend maybe handing over the reins to like a docent who's just a great storyteller, and like letting them do whatever they want. Maybe like, check in on it. But it's not a bad idea to choose a character who you already have in your community and be like, hey, do you want to take your storytelling to the next level and see what they do? It might turn into like a total, like it might be the next big thing, this docent of yours.
Yeah, if you are all following hashtag Cowboy Jim.
Yeah, Cowboy Jim
from the Cowboy Museum. I'll also include that link if you haven't heard about him. You need to. I will also share. I did do a stint of social media takeover a few weeks ago, and here was my big takeaway. My kids and I spent weeks building a replica of the State History Museum out of Legos. Literally, it was this massive undertaking, and we had like the Roslyn mine and the little lake sticking out of the rocks, and we had the toy trains, and we had the big object tree, and people loved it, right? It definitely was whimsical, but the most popular post from the week was an image from our collection, was the Ezra Meeker. I did something on like, what's the biggest object in our collection? And it's the Ezra Meeker wagon from his 1910 crossing of the Oregon Trail. And then we also have in our collection a picture of a historical image of Meeker standing in front of it. And people loved it. Like, they love to see stuff from your collections. Everybody had a story, and my great grandpa knew Ezra and whatever. Like, it was great. So sometimes the things that are simple can be as effective as the things you spend a lot of time on. So that was my big takeaway. Unless there's more questions coming in, I did want to, first of all, I shared, if you want to follow what Elisa is doing for the Historical Society online, she's in charge of all of our suffrage centennial programming. So Suffrage 100 WA. Check it out on Facebook and Instagram for sure. She's doing some cool stuff. She's got a lot of digital programming that we would love to invite you all to participate in, a big Wikithon to close the gender gap in Wikipedia, which is something that can be done from everybody's home. Anyway, great stuff. One question that I know we've been talking a lot about here at the Historical Society, and I'd love to get sort of Andrea and others to think about this and share some thoughts. We felt a lot of pressure, right, when everything shut down, to get we were sort of stuck. Do we spend our energy and time producing new content? Or do we take things that, do we think about creative ways to replicate the exhibit experience? And do we kind of put our energy towards getting new things on our digital platforms and our website? I think that we struggled out the gate to figure out where to direct our energy. Do we just pull out things that will be evergreen and live beyond this kind of moment of COVID-19? Or is it really important to respond in a kind of with timely kind of content? I don't know. And folks that have organizations that have limited resources, it's hard to know kind of where to direct your energy to get the most kind of bang and engagement. Anybody have kind of thoughts on that? Yeah.
Well, one thing, I did see an article not too long ago about how virtual tours are becoming less popular because people have now seen them, or, so I would, of course, because I'm biased towards activity and experience, err towards that side. But it doesn't have to be expensive. You could take an opportunity to reframe a lot of your interpretation in your museum by seeing what visitors would say about an object, and go through, and you can almost get an evaluation of how your story is being told by hearing how other people might be responding to that story. Is that story diverse and inclusive enough? Is that story relevant? How are we answering the so what question people always have? I mean, I went into museums because I didn't like them. That's why I went into this field, because I wasn't responding in my youth to what appeared to be an intellectual showcase as opposed to how it related to me. So I'm always very much biased towards how does it respond? So if you have the opportunity to focus through different experiences in your museum and ask people how they would frame an object or how they would interpret it, that might be an interesting time to get some evaluation.
Yeah, that's fascinating to think about, using this moment as an opportunity to do that kind of evaluative piece, which so frequently we know is so important to the work we do, but it's always hard to find the time. So yeah, that's a great suggestion. Let me just read a couple things. I know Elisa's been sharing feedback. So there's a concern, and I think that a lot of small museums are feeling this, that by doing a virtual tour, they're sort of giving the goods away for free. And I just wonder what your thoughts are on kind of, and there's been some data coming out about intent to return to cultural sites, and it seems clear that people, as soon as they feel safe, very much intend to return to our museums. You know, that's all speculation right now, but there's data to support that. Should we be concerned about, you know, holding back a little bit to make sure that there's some incentive? Yeah, go ahead, Andrea.
There have been studies done about this, because that fear when people were first putting things up online was very palpable, especially for art museums. And the Minnesota Art Museum did a fairly extensive study that it actually brings people to your museum more. That your younger kid will see the tour perhaps and drag the parents. So it is not a problem as far as what people have studied so far. People will want to come more to see it for themselves.
Yeah, for sure. And it's been fascinating to see the kind of journey of the intensely watermarked images coming out of museum collections to now, you know, a lot of collections museums just have their collections of digital images available, you know, accessible, and people still go. People haven't stopped, you know, visiting. So yeah, I think that's a common concern and a common fear, and it's good to know that the data doesn't really support it. Yeah. So is there anything else that anybody wants to ask before we kind of wrap up and say goodbye? We covered kind of a lot, and I intentionally brought these three folks together because I know they could speak to different kind of aspects of the topic of digital engagement. So I wouldn't be surprised if you hang up and think of more questions. So definitely feel very comfortable emailing me. So one more. Oh, great. So we are a hands-on natural and historical museum. We are now thinking of doing an outdoor tour of the grounds and trail, also field trips to other historical sites down the coast. So definitely sounds awesome. And if you have outdoor space around your museum as you're planning for reopening, which is the topic of our next gathering next Tuesday, to talk about plans for reopening, maximizing any outdoor space that you have at your site is going to be, I think, key to getting out ahead of the reopening. So yes, I will share, Andrea is asking for the link to that study on art museums and sort of digital engagement not disrupting physical engagement. So if you could share that with me, that would be great, and I'll pass that along. And just say thank you. Thanks to Elisa and Andrea and Chris, and thank you all for joining us, and thanks for participating in my first poll. It worked so well, I'm going to do it all the time now. And I hope that you all stay well and expect to get an email from me in the next few days with a follow-up. Take care.